Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on counterfeit cosmetics in e-commerce, a look into 2021. This webinar is brought to you by brand intelligence leader Redpoints and Cosmetics Business, a multi-channel communication platform for the cosmetics industry. Before I get to the fun part, I have two small housekeeping requests. One is that just above everyone's screen to the right there, you'll see a bell icon. If you could mute this by clicking on the icon, that would be hugely helpful, and it will stop the other attendees from hearing your notifications throughout the webinar. Also, you'll notice that to the right of your screen, there is an option to send us in questions. And at the end of the webinar, there will be a dedicated Q&A session where the Redpoints team will be answering anything that you're eager to know. The ongoing COVID-19 crisis and associated lockdowns internationally have transformed the way consumers buy beauty products. We're no longer taking the time to browse supermarket shelves for commodity goods. We're no longer shopping for leisure in department stores or malls with our friends, and working from home habits mean many of us can't simply pop into a drugstore for cosmetics as part of our daily commute. Understandably, e-commerce, already a growing sales channel, has become increasingly important. But what forms of e-commerce are benefiting in particular? What cosmetics are selling fastest online? And does this uptick in online retail make beauty brands even more vulnerable to counterfeiters? To answer these questions and to help you navigate these complex times, Redpoints has conducted a comprehensive consumer poll of the fast-moving consumer goods industry, also known as the consumer packaged goods or CPG industry for those of you across the pond. And this includes beauty, and it was to ascertain how consumer shopping habits have changed as a result of the pandemic and what the brand security implications of this might be. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to today's panel. We have Daniel Shapiro, Vice President of Brand Relationships at Redpoints.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
We have Oliver Bolton, Head of Solution Engineering at Redpoints.
Hi everyone, pleasure to be here.
And we have Miriam Mixer, Trademark Attorney. And I am Julia Ray, Technical Editor of Cosmetics Business, which is a global platform owned by HPCI Media, covering information on the beauty and personal care industries, both online and in print. So, why does today's conversation matter? The COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically accelerated the move towards online retail across the board. Market research company Euromonitor International predicts that for the United States in 2020, e-commerce generally, this is not only for the beauty industry, but across the board, will be just shy of $672 billion. Now, this would compare with 514 in 2019, and Euromonitor further predicts that the US e-commerce retail market will reach nearly $721 billion in 2021. When it comes to beauty, we can see a similar pattern. In 2020, online sales for luxury beauty products doubled in the UK, according to data from the NPD Group. From January to October 2019, e-commerce accounted for just 21% of the prestige cosmetics market. From January to October 2020, in contrast, it accounted for 41% of the prestige cosmetics market. And it is safe to assume that these shopping habits are going to continue, if not become more pronounced, while we progress through the worst of the pandemic. But if people aren't shopping by bricks and mortar, what are their online retail preferences? Because obviously not all digital routes to market are the same. Where and what are people purchasing online? And what new shopping trends can we expect to see emerge in 2021? These are questions we will be answering today with our speakers. And in the second part of this webinar, we will also share some best practice from companies in the cosmetics sphere that have been quick to adapt to today's new normal. And with that, I'd like to hand over the reins to Daniel, who will share some key shopping trends from Redpoints research. Daniel.
Thank you, Julia, and thanks for a great introduction into today's webinar. For those of you who may not be familiar with Redpoints, Redpoints is the fastest growing brand intelligence platform in the market to make the internet safer for both brands and consumers. Today, we're working with a little over 800 brands, identifying and removing counterfeits across marketplaces, social media platforms, and standalone e-commerce sites. Again, to all of you, thank you for joining us. For that, we'll get started. As Julia mentioned, we commissioned a survey of 2,000 US consumers. We did it in, I think it was December 18th through December 30th, with our goal to better understand the shopping habits and trends inside the CPG industry. And again, as Julia mentioned earlier, but to make sure we're all on the same page, CPG for us is consumer packaged goods, and in Europe it tends to be FMCG, fast moving consumer goods. But we're talking about everything from everyday products such as food, beverages, clothing, tobacco, makeup, cosmetic, household products, and even OTC, over-the-counter medicines. So that was the concept behind it. And as you'll see in today's presentation, the cosmetic and toiletry industry is expected to see major growth in the way in which consumers buy online in the months and years to come. So for those of you who might be interested in this report we commissioned, you're welcome to go to our website at www.redpoints.com/resources. Or I think we're trying to pop it up right here. I'm not sure if we're able to do it. There it is. We're able to pop it up right here in the webinar. So for those of you who would like to get a copy, just go ahead and click Get My Copy, and you'll have a copy of this report. And I think you'll find it to be very interesting. If you don't, just click the dismiss and it will disappear for you. So without further ado, let's get into what we think are 7 trends that we identified coming out from this report. Now, when you get the report, you'll see there's a lot of really great information. We ourselves selected 7 topics we think here that look to be really interesting trends. So for trend number 1, what is the most popular online purchase for cosmetics and toiletries? We asked people, when asked, what CPGs were you looking to buy during 2020? The majority of the survey respondents said they had bought cosmetics and cleaning products. Not on this list, but interestingly close third item was over-the-counter medicines, was another popular one. Now, however, what's interesting here is historically, sales for cosmetics have largely come from physical brick-and-mortar stores, with relatively smaller amounts in the e-commerce space. Having said that, according to a recent report from McKinsey, there are signs that the beauty and cosmetic industry has been one of the sectors most resilient during the pandemic, and I think that's really a great piece of information. The report, also published at the end of the year, found that the beauty and health industry, the cosmetic and beauty industry, would see continued growth each year in the range somewhere between 20 and 30% during this pandemic period. So really good news for the cosmetic space. Trend number 2, when we asked which CPG products are you planning to purchase in 2021, the good news is shoppers are planning to continue to spend in the cosmetic product area. While we saw consumers getting more and more comfortable with the convenience and selection of online purchases in 2020, we do see that 2021 expects to be another successful year in this space. So really good news there. When we look about the trend number 3 from our report, we looked at what areas are the go-to channels for business, and marketplaces seems to be the go-to answer. So when we asked folks, what products do you think you'll buy in the cosmetic and toiletry space? Perhaps not a huge surprise, but when we asked these respondents to consider where they would buy their cosmetics and beauty supplies, marketplaces like Amazon, eBay are clearly the go-to channels. You can see that following marketplaces is, supermarket retail sites, brands' own websites are strong, which is great. And interestingly, but not on this report, it's on our report, but not on this chart, excuse me, is 25% of the respondents said they intended to buy their CPG coming up in 2021 on messaging apps like WeChat. Now, I think what's interesting here, it means that brands have to keep an eye on the changing pressures and be fluid about where consumers intend to get their product. In a recent report by Retail Insights released back in August of 2020, they expected that the share of health and beauty would somewhere increase around 23% each year by 2025. Also really good news. Also in that report, it anticipates that the health and beauty online sales in marketplaces platforms such as Alibaba, Amazon, JD.com, Pinduoduo will account for about 65% of the beauty online sales by 2025. So that's massive. And of course, it means that the strategy for cosmetic and beauty brands will continue to change and grow as these trends continue to materialize. We asked another question, which was, in trend number 4, excuse me, we looked at, is it open season for counterfeits? And the question we asked people were, do you think you may have purchased a counterfeit in the previous 12 months? So you can see that 56% of the shoppers had bought a counterfeit. Now that's crazy, and obviously significant to know that counterfeiters have noticed this trend of cosmetics and beauty growing, and they're very quick to jump on this. So it hasn't got outside their perception. We asked another question, which was, if you had knowingly purchased a counterfeit, and this, unfortunately, again, crazy, but of the 56% of the people who bought counterfeits, 62% of those people answered yes, they bought it because it was cheaper. And of course, this is an alarming statistic for brands, sort of a punch in the stomach. As we know, millions of people have had tough financial times and strains during the pandemic. And so more and more, price becomes the number one reason in buying decisions. One consumer trend that is also important to discuss is the pandemic has forced more buyers to buy CPG type product on e-commerce. Many of these consumers have never purchased on e-commerce before. They were traditional brick and mortar. And that really means to us is that we have less sophisticated consumers entering online shopping for the first time, and they may not know the telltale signs on what to look for or not to be taken advantage of or exploited by counterfeiters. So I think, again, as brands, we think about there are more and more consumers coming to online to buy. Not everybody is sophisticated in how they approach online shopping. So something to think about as we go forward. We also asked one other question, which was, what products do you believe were counterfeit? Now, unfortunately, most of the highest number of in our survey were cosmetics at 14%, followed by cleaning product, OTC, and even baked goods, which is interesting. Lastly, we asked these consumers, where did you buy these counterfeits? And the most popular e-commerce sites for cosmetics were marketplaces, followed by social media platforms. Now, social media have grown significantly over the years, with many turning to these channels to buy goods and services, mainly because of the impact and influence of influencers, right? I mean, that's a big strategy for most companies today. Now, trend number 5, the perceived quality of fakes. Does it mislead consumers? So the question we asked folks were, of those who had purchased counterfeits online, what was your perception of the quality? Now, this trend goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, which I believe is critically important. And that fact is the appearance of fake cosmetics, which may seem harmless, can even actually have a perceived quality of good. And this is, again, generally a bad news for brands, because our data showed that 50% of the respondents thought the counterfeit cosmetics were good and even exceeded their expectations. That's a little bit frightening because we have no idea what was in that product. And to some consumers, it was okay. So something to really sort of scratch your head about. And when buying online, we asked the question, when buying online, what's the most important factors that you take in consideration when buying? And as I had previously mentioned, because of the pandemic, price being the number one reason, of course, followed by product reviews. And product reviews is one thing I would say for all brands to keep an eye on, not only your product reviews on your own websites, but product reviews on marketplaces. Because when you see marketplaces product reviews start to deteriorate, it's a really good marker that maybe there's counterfeits infiltrating into some of those marketplaces, and something you should be aware of is keeping an eye on those reviews. Now, trend number 6, are brands losing trust in the eyes of the consumers? Question we asked people were, did buying a fake affect your perception of the brand? And unfortunately, the answer was that counterfeits create a losing situation for brands. Not only are brands losing revenues as consumers buy fakes instead of genuine and legitimate product, but the insult to injury, I think, is even more tragic. Some may think that consumers, when they buy a fake, might be angry at the marketplace or maybe at the social media platform. But what we see from this response is that they tend to hold the brand responsible. And you can see again, 47% of the people in this do not trust the brand. And this number seems to be moving up all year long. We have commissioned, I think, around 4 or 5 surveys during 2021 in different industries, in toys and fashion and fitness. And we saw early on in the year that maybe 25% held the brand responsible. And then we saw it maybe at 30. At 47%, it's the highest we've seen so far. And I think more and more consumers are getting frustrated that brands need to be doing more. So finally, the last trend, number 7, are brands losing revenue because of the counterfeits. When we asked if you would buy from the brand again, the results, not so great. Similar to our previous slide, we showed that 47% would no longer buy from the brand. Can I have you move there? Thank you. 47% said they would no longer buy from the brand. This is very concerning, obviously, because counterfeits pose a significant threat to the cosmetic brand's revenue. And as you guys know, in the cosmetic industry, all of your designs are carefully reviewed. All of your products have gone through rigorous testing, and you can't compete financially with counterfeiters. And again, I think about sometimes if it wasn't hard enough to do business already, to compete against yourself. And I think when I say that, I mean you have a legitimate product up there and a counterfeit product up there at a different price. And in one instance, you're competing against yourself. And I think in today's world, brands can't really afford to share even 5 or 10% of your sales with a counterfeit. It's a tough and terrible situation. And I think there is a lot brands can do. So listen, those are the 7 trends. I wanted to share them with you. I look forward to you taking a look at our report, but I'll wrap up maybe and summarize 3 quick comments associated with today's report that I shared with you. Here's the good news. The cosmetic and beauty business is growing rapidly on e-commerce, and I think that's a really great news for all of the brands. 2 is, the not so good news is that counterfeiters are keenly aware that the cosmetic and beauty industry is growing, and they're there to take advantage of your consumers. And then the third sort of takeaway would be this. I think brands need to be aggressive in the fight. They've got to be proactive. They've got to be nimble. Develop a strong brand protection strategy and prepare themselves to take advantage of the upcoming growth in the CPG category online. So that's my quick overall summary. At this point, Julia, I'll send it back to you. And thank you for your time this morning, everybody.
Fantastic. Thank you so much there, Daniel. For anyone who may have joined us a little bit after the introduction, if you can see the little bell icon just at the top right of your screen, if you can mute that, that would be hugely helpful. Thank you. So to make proceedings a little bit more interactive, RedPoint would like to conduct an audience poll with you guys. And the aim here is to really share with the other attendees what the overall beauty industry approach will be to digital throughout this year. Now you can see the first question on the slide there in front of you right now, and that is, how is your company adjusting its digital investment in 2021? And the second will be, on which online channel are you planning to invest more in 2021? Now, you'll notice that both questions are multiple choice. And to answer, if you look to the right of your screen again, you will see a section called Poll. If you click on that, you'll be able to click and submit each of your answers. Now, I can already see that some answers are coming in, which is fantastic. So let's Lovely. So keep on coming in. We really value your input here. It's all very quick and very easy to take part. So to repeat, those questions are: how is your company adjusting its digital investment in 2021? And on which online channel are you planning to invest more in 2021? Lovely. So just give it maybe a few more seconds there. Wow, this is a great response. I can see things are still moving, so keep them coming in for the next few seconds. Fantastic. All right, I will ask you to stop there because otherwise we just have changing numbers, and I will read out the responses now. So for the first question there, which is: how is your company adjusting its digital investment in 2021? By far and away the biggest, the winner there is 70% said increasing digital investment, so it's really increasing there. We've also had a good response for significantly increasing digital investments. So we're either doing it or we're doing it really to a huge degree. That's 26%. The only 4% are keeping investment flat. So that really shows that this is hugely important. And for which online channels are you planning to invest? Again, by far and away the biggest, 47% social media. Then we have own website, 27%, marketplaces at 18%, video apps at 7%, and at 2% we have messaging apps. So again, social media there, a really big deal going forward. So thank you guys so much there for contributing. So yes, I think possibly at this juncture, it would be prudent to take a look at what actions we are seeing leading cosmetics brands taking in light of the current global situation. So in recent months, we've witnessed major beauty brand owners investing in their teams responsible for e-commerce. So we've seen Estee Lauder Companies has hired Guy Thomas, formerly of Pepsi, to lead its online strategy. Coty, meanwhile, recently appointed John Dennis Mariani to the new role of Chief Digital Officer. And Avon has just hired Karen McKellarton, formerly of P&G, as Chief Technology Officer. So what we are seeing are the first steps by beauty players in the direction of a major digital overhaul in response to growing demand for online services. As Daniel mentioned, e-commerce platforms play an important role here. And I think he gave that huge stat, which is that between 2020 and 2025, 65% of all health and beauty online sales will be through those platforms: Alibaba, Amazon, JD.com, and Pinduoduo. Another important factor is social strategy, which obviously was confirmed there in the poll. So for many consumers, social media has become more essential than ever to connect with the friends and family that they can't see in person. So it makes sense that because more of us are at home, we're scrolling through social media rather than outside doing things, that companies are marketing to us via these channels. We're pretty much sitting ducks. And you can see, again, that this is a priority by companies' activity. So on Instagram, users can now shop for beauty and fashion products via its IGTV space, and that's been since September. Snapchat recently signed a deal with beauty tech provider Perfect Corp, which will let consumers use beauty try-on features on Snapchat, and Pinterest is likewise rolling out its augmented reality capabilities across geographical markets. So social media players are tooling up to make themselves better destinations for beauty shoppers. All in all, therefore, with a move towards e-commerce, especially by maybe naive consumers who are new to online retail, as Daniel said, and more online channels opening up, there is something of a perfect storm for counterfeiters to take advantage of. So, what can brands do to protect themselves? For this part, I'd like to pass proceedings over to Miriam Richter, trademark attorney. She supports many brands protecting their IP, including Ofra Cosmetics, a vegan beauty and skincare brand. And Ofra Cosmetics has also been using Redpoint services to bolster their IP strategy. Over to you, Miriam.
Thank you so much, Julia. As Julia mentioned, I represent Ofra Cosmetics, a local business. I'm in South Florida in the United States with one location, They do all their manufacturing in their headquarters buildings, and that is it. And yet, Ofra has a huge counterfeit problem. They have a very, very large social media footprint, and so with that comes a large counterfeit problem. So I have a picture that, if we could bring it in. This picture shows authentic product and counterfeit product side by side. As you can see, the counterfeiters have actually done a very good job of imitating our packaging as well as our product. What's interesting is that Ofra went through a complete brand refresh in the summer of 2018, and almost immediately these counterfeits with the new logo were found all over the world. It's hard to tell when you look at them separately. Side by side even, they look quite similar. But unless you actually look at them together, it's almost impossible to tell which is which. The authentic brand tube for the long-lasting lipstick is a tad shorter, and the inside of the barrel is square, while the counterfeit is round. The labeling on the end is also different, but all in all, they're doing a very good job of mimicking all of the new packaging. Unless you look closely again, both of these products look very similar. However, they did not spell blusher correctly. They left out the H. One of the other giveaways is that on the back it says made in PRC. Well, as I mentioned, all of Ofra's products are made in the United States. So this is a huge problem. Consumers don't know they're getting fake cosmetics online. And Ofra has taken a big step in combating this by employing red points to weed out all of the counterfeits online. Because Ofra is a direct-to-retail manufacturer, then it becomes highly, highly critical. If we could go to the next slide. So as a trademark attorney, one of the things that I've found globally is that imposter and counterfeiter trademark filings are way, way up. It is quite interesting that they are very, very bold, and it's not just a question of making the counterfeits and putting them out in the marketplace, but rather they are taking these steps to prevent brand owners from being able to enforce their trademark rights. Many countries do not have strong procedures for this and require registered trademarks if you want to enforce your brand. And so by the imposters and counterfeiters filing for trademarks, they are effectively blocking the company from obtaining their own trademark in certain countries and making it much, much harder to enforce against the counterfeits at the same time. Cyber squatting, which has been around for as long as the internet has been around, has been kind of flat. I think that that's one of the trends I've seen, that cyber squatters are not gaining any more ground than they had in the past. But it also, I have seen a trend that cyber squatting also depends on your business model. For instance, for Ofra, a direct-to-retail brand, it is not a huge problem. However, brands that have exclusive retailers are seeing cyber squatting continue. So that is something to consider in terms of how you plan your expenditures for combating counterfeits. You need to tweak it according to your business model. Online platforms by far are the worst location for online counterfeiters. And that, again, is where Red Points is key, because they have the ability to do a lot of that enforcement for you when you identify products as being counterfeit. Moving on, globally, there have been some changes in intellectual property law that have benefited brand owners tremendously. China updated their intellectual property law last year, and we're also already seeing better results in litigation and procedures in China, which is by far the largest source of counterfeit products for my clients. Interestingly enough, the US has just changed the law, the trademark law, effective January 2nd of this past year. And that one of the key aspects of that is that we now have the ability in the United States to presume irreparable harm from counterfeiters. This is quite key because proving the harm is often the hardest part of litigation, the most expensive part of litigation. And so it is now law in the United States that if someone is infringing your mark, you have the presumption that they are harming your business. So that is a very, very big win for trademark owners. I think that the takeaways from this are basically you need to be extremely proactive in how you monitor the marketplace for counterfeits and what actions you take. One of the things I learned just yesterday about Chinese law is that, or at least brand protection in China, when filing a trademark in China, you don't just want to file your trademark. You want to file a translation of your trademark into Chinese because the Chinese consumers will be using that name. So it's important that you control that as well because it will be translated by the counterfeiters. So if you're the first to translate it and file for trademark protection of the translation as well, you are getting way ahead of the counterfeiters. So proactivity and creativity are the key to continuing to prevent the counterfeiters from gaining the upper hand. One thing you should always remember is that there will always be bad actors out there who feel that they have a lot more fun making money by seeing how many laws they can get around than by doing it the right way. So they will always be there. So you need to change with them and be creative in your brand protection. And with that, I think I will turn it back over to Julia. Thank you.
Hi, I think it's actually Oliver's turn now, so I'll pass it over to you, Oliver.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Julia. And thanks for that, Miriam. That was super, super interesting. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. What I'd like to share with you today is a very brief overview as to the Red Points platform and how it is that basically technology can be used to help protect your brand from this counterfeiting, the issues that we're currently seeing online. So what Red Points provides you with is a portal to be able to log into to essentially check these listings that have been detected on online marketplaces, including social media, and we bring them into one place for review. At the click of a button, what we're able to do is present to you in a clear format these suspect listings that we found across the likes of, it could be marketplaces such as Amazon, eBay, Shopee, Tokopedia. And with this global reach, what we can attempt to do is attack the potential whack-a-mole effect that we might see of listings popping up and dropping back down under different names. With a technological provider such as Redpoints, we're consistently detecting across the marketplaces in question to bring in potential infringements. So with a portal such as this, what we could do is drill down into very different areas according to that. So you may want to focus this on a specific marketplace, for example. By applying this filter, what we're doing is we're showing you those results that match really specific keywords that we've been able to go through and bring into the top of the funnel. So let me just quickly refresh this. And we should then have the filtered view of the different listings. Having applied that, that allows us to then go through and validate really specific individual cards. Let's just take that back to the confirmation page. We can show you this at a different point. Most importantly, what you then need is the ability to go through and actually check based on the different reporting that we have. So what we're able to display to you is the different volume of actual detections. So how many links is it that we've actually found? Of those, how many may contain potential counterfeit indicators? Ultimately, how many enforcements have we been able to take? So how many enforcements have we completed? And then how successful have we been overall? We also represent other data, such as being able to show an aggregated view of individual sellers. And all of this key information can be fed into our automation system to create rules to, let's say, we've detected products based on your brand name. We now need to make the distinction between which ones may be counterfeiters and which ones not. And we can use things like seller names. So if you're familiar with seller names selling your legitimate product, we can make sure that they're whitelisted and separated from this platform. In the same way, we can apply blacklists in order to automate the procedure from finding an infringing listing to making sure that that's removed from the specific platform. The last part that I'd like to show you is really trying to show an economic value to having a solution such as Redpoints. What we're able to do, based on the volume of enforcements that we've done and the number of enforced listings that we've seen, we can help you to present internally to your stakeholders or even validate to yourself how much of an impact these counterfeiters are actually having to, on you as a brand. We can see aggregated views of based on the, let's say, the enforced value of the individual listings. And we can see really the massive impact that this can have. That's really from a brief overview, what I'd like to show you today. And at this point, I'll pass you back over to Julia, I believe.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Oliver. So we've received lots of questions from you, the listeners, throughout the webinar. And I'll now begin moderating this Q&A session with both Daniel and Oliver providing the expertise. So let's have a look at what you guys have sent in. We have a question here asking, what would you suggest to protect our identity and keep away from counterfeits? So Daniel, maybe for you?
Sure. I'm not sure, exactly the question. Your identity, of course, is your brand. So you don't want to hide your identity, right? That is, in fact, the value proposition of your business. The question is, how do you keep that away from counterfeiters? And the answer is, the way you do it is you have to have a sort of what we refer to in our industry as sort of a brand protection strategy. That is a defensive posture that actively pursues looking on marketplaces, social media platforms, standalone e-commerce sites, looking for people who are taking your trademark, your brand, and trying to pass it off as authentic. There are a number of ways to do that. We deploy some different sorts of technologies to not only find it, we use a few different AI technologies to help us understand the difference between what is authentic and what is in fact an infringement on your intellectual property rights. Sometimes people just take your photos, and sometimes people use your brand name and they sell something that you don't even sell, but they use your brand name in the title just to give their item value, right? So we take all those down as they infringe. So the best way to protect your identity or your brand out there, I think, Julie, would be, to think through a comprehensive brand protection strategy, and recognize that you need to take advantage of the good growth that's happening in cosmetics, at the same time defending people from taking advantage of that.
Absolutely. So again, we have a question here. I think maybe it's a clarifying question, asking what is the difference between a brand's own website and e-commerce?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Sometimes we always talk about marketplaces being the Amazons, the eBays, and so forth, social media platforms we know. And then we talk about standalone websites or e-commerce sites. So I think about it like this. If there were a website called www.fakecosmetics.com, that's not a marketplace. It is a standalone e-commerce channel. They might have multiple brands of different health and beauty products on there, but it is a standalone e-commerce website. And then your own site, if you were your own brand, as an example of Avon, www.avon.com, that's their own brand e-commerce site. So the difference between a standalone website and your own website would be www.fakecosmetics and www.avon.com. Both e-commerce sites, one trying to traffic in cosmetics, the other one obviously the brand itself.
Absolutely. So we have one here which possibly is one for Oliver, which is saying, how does the enforcement work?
It's a really good question. So as we're a technological provider, it's a SaaS software, essentially what we're doing. So at the point of you becoming a Redpoints client, we take all of the information that's required in order to complete the enforcement on your behalf. So we take your legal documentation, including trademarks, letters of authorization to act on your behalf. And what we do is we load all of this information into our platform. At the point of you validating, which sadly I didn't get the chance to just show you how that validation piece works, but at the point of validating to Redpoints that you do want us to act on your behalf and take down the infringing listing, at the point of you confirming that listing, we combine the legal documentation associated to the reason type, so to speak. So whether it's a counterfeit or a brand abuse case, replica, we associate your legal documentation with the letter of authorization and link that to the specific marketplace and their required reason code. So maybe some of the listeners are familiar with the process of having to go through the different forms and things to make sure that the marketplace takes that down. We complete that on their behalf and all through an automated process with technology.
Fantastic. I hope that answered your question there. So here's one about social media, which I personally think is quite interesting. Is it as easy to take down a counterfeit product from marketplaces than from Facebook, for example? Daniel, maybe this is one for you?
Sure. Part of our strategy is making sure we have good relationships with all these marketplaces. And, whether it's Facebook or Amazon or eBay, we work really hard at making sure that we have a very strong working relationship. As it is, we send a lot of information. And those platforms are trusted platforms. And do people come in somehow and sneak around and try to misuse the platform for bad activity? And the answer is yes. But the platforms are ready and to respond very quickly. So for us on social media, like a partner of ours at Facebook, between us notifying them and the item coming down, I think last year in 2020, we averaged 55 minutes from when we sent them the notification to when the item came down. So because of our relationship and the eagerness of Facebook to work with partners and brands and to do a top level job, the response time, it can be very, very fast. Sometimes because of Facebook and the way it's designed, finding all the different private groups can be a little bit challenging. But once identified, they're awesome to work for, and items come down, as an example, on Facebook or Instagram, as fast as you could imagine. I mean, 55 minutes was our time frame, and that's remarkable. So
that's great to know. They're all on the brand side, which is lovely. So I think possibly this one would be good for Oliver. Are you able to protect my design patent as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, again, focusing this back to the technological standpoint that we have here at Redpoints. So yes, we absolutely can. We can, through various technologies, whether it be image searching, image validation. We have different technologies depending on the type of infringements that's required. If there's a unique design that we can then spot and potentially train an image recognition model, as an example, to identify them and ultimately enforce them, yes, we absolutely can. So that allows us to be even more expansive in terms of our initial detection, but also the accuracy is improved greatly with the application of image recognition and our like-for-like image searching capabilities that we have.
Fantastic. So we have one here asking, any advice for a brand with a low budget looking for quick wins to fight fakes? Daniel, is this one that you might be able to answer?
Sure. I think it's a really good question. And everybody's budget for this is different, and everybody's approach to this is different. When we think about how do you strategize on solving counterfeits, and I think one of the things that I think is impressive about Redpoints, while we don't look to necessarily be a provider, we are looking to figure out how to be a better partner. And I think in the relationship of partnerships, we might see that there is challenges on marketplaces, social media, these standalone websites, and there's no reason to go after all of them if most concerning to the brand is we're seeing issues in marketplaces. Then we take a smaller size budget and we solve that. And then it's that point, once we're sure we've sort of solved the marketplace, we could, suggest, we're seeing some transformation where social media is becoming difficult. So we don't have to attack all of those things at one time. We can attack one particular segment. And when we think about marketplaces today, there are hundreds of thousands of, not hundreds of thousands, but there are hundreds of marketplaces from, US, South America, Latin America, you throw out Europe, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, the Philippines. We don't have to do all of the marketplaces in the world. We can, just now we have some customers looking at Africa, India, but we don't have to do all that for any one customer. We could make it just on the marketplaces that are inside the USA, or just in marketplaces that are covering the majority of Europe. So we can segment that based on the budget and come up with a number that fits that customer's needs. So the price really shouldn't be a barrier. We can make it very, very tight, and a strategy that would work.
Excellent. So we have one here asking, what's the worst case scenario if, as a brand, I don't grip this?
Yeah, I suppose the worst case scenario is you go out of business, potentially. I worked for a marketplace before coming to Redpoints. And one of the things that we learned in sort of fighting this fight in the marketplace is that, price isn't always elastic. So if a genuine product sells for $50, but it's all over the internet, all over the marketplaces at $20, your cosmetic item, and you don't do anything about it, I think two things tend to happen. Number one, the price that people are willing to pay becomes 20, not 50, which is a problem. And the second thing is that if the product isn't, the counterfeit product is typically is crappy, it's not very good, people start leaving reviews, not only on the marketplace for which the counterfeits are being sold, but they tend to go to your own brand site, and they say, I would never buy this product, it's so poor. And then what happens is there's so many other cosmetic brands out there that eventually there's too many good choices, and I'm not going to buy product that people are leaving reviews that are bad. I'll just switch my cosmetic brand. So not doing something about it, I think hopefully not right away, but the downside could be that you wouldn't be doing that business very long. It would come to an end at some point. The challenge would be very, very difficult. Sometimes I just say this, sometimes people think about counterfeits. Well, it's not actually my product. And I think to always remember, in the world of counterfeiting, it doesn't actually have to work. I think everybody's seen counterfeit Rolex watches. If you bought one, you might not expect in 2 blocks that it works anymore. So people don't intend it to work. They just intend to take your money. And the brand is the one that suffers because they leave the negative reviews for your brand.
Absolutely. And Miriam, I believe that you also have an answer to this as well.
I do. Strangely enough, some imposters and counterfeiters have such gall as to actually file lawsuits against the brand owners. I have literally seen this happen. I have had to defend brand owners in court from imposters who, because they got a trademark registration or because of something else that they did, feel that they have a legal argument that entitles them to enforce it. And so I have seen it happen. So I always tell people proactivity is the way to go. You must, if you have any dreams of success for your brand, you must proactively anticipate all of these bad actors.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Miriam. I think there's food for thought there for whoever sent that one in. So we've just had one in now, which I think that Daniel may have kind of touched on slightly, but possibly want to answer this specific question. They've asked, in your experience, what is the average response time for marketplaces like Amazon or eBay to remove violating listings on their platform?
Yeah, I think, they all can be different. Most platforms, I almost say all platforms, have a process of notice and takedown. That is, if you identify an item that is infringing on your intellectual property, they'll take it down. Some use a combination of portals that you can log into and do it. Some have web forms that you fill out. Some require emails to be written. All of them have their own process. So it has become commonplace that marketplaces have a process. It is not common that they use the same process. That's not prescribed. So as an example for red points, when we report to eBay, we use an API. We actually connect our enforcement documentations right through an API. And it can be as quick as 4 hours. In Amazon, if a company is a brand registered in Amazon, it can be very quick in a couple hours. If it's a non-brand registered brand in Amazon, it might take a few more hours. Alibaba, Lazada, DHgate, all can be very quick if you use the right form. Some of these platforms require specific language, so sometimes if your language is a little bit off, it can extend the time. For us, because we do this so regularly, we've developed templates that really work for the platform. So for us, it can be, I don't know, maybe on the short side a few hours, on the long side maybe 10, 12, 14 hours, all depending on the time frame in which we notify. And of course the different times of the world, right? We're sending our notifications out from our headquarters in Barcelona. Time hours are different in different countries, so that can add a plus or minus a little bit to it, but generally very, very quick. Really responsive. I would say most platforms, particularly those we think about eBay's and Amazon, very, very responsive, very quick to help.
Lovely.
If I could jump in with just one other point on that to add to what Daniel said. U.S. law right now is also very sticky about that because of safe harbors for marketplaces, which is another reason why it is really, really important to register your brand in all the countries that you do business and some that you don't. because there are many countries in this world that do not have a use requirement for trademarks, and you can get your registration if it's someplace that counterfeiters are working, even if you're not. So it's part of the big picture. But unfortunately, a lot of the marketplaces do have this safe harbor. And they also, if a takedown notice is sent, I've seen it happen quite a bit, that the counterfeiter will respond and say, no, it isn't, at which point the platform will say, it's between you guys in court. So another reason to be very proactive, because intellectual property litigation is very expensive.
Fantastic, thank you. So I think we're almost out of time, but we have time for maybe one more question, because we just had one through asking, I think this is Redpoint, do you have offices in China?
Yes, we have 4 offices altogether. We have our headquarters in Barcelona, an office in New York City, an office in Salt Lake City where I am, and then we have an office in Beijing. So yes, we do have an office in China.
Fantastic. I'm sure we both know that. Lovely. So I can see that we're nearly out of time now. So I'm going to have to round up the Q&A session at this point. If we didn't get around to answering your question, Redpoints will ensure that you will receive a response following the session. Redpoints will also be in touch shortly, providing you with access to the presentation in case you want to revisit the content or share it with your colleagues. I'd personally like to extend a huge thank you to Daniel, Oliver, and Miriam. And Redpoints and Cosmetics Business would like to thank you all too for joining us today to learn more about counterfeit cosmetics in e-commerce. We hope that you will leave well prepared to tackle the issue of fakes and brand protection in light of the brave new world that COVID-19 has shaped. Thank you and goodbye.
And don't forget to watch our upcoming podcast sessions.